I'm teaching on something today. It's a little different, but I've seen example after example after example, and I got to address it. I got to talk about it because it help all of you guys. All right? So, and it's a little bit, the first one's the most important one we're going to talk about. So, what do you guys think that every single problem in your business comes down to right now? Everybody that works here. Everybody's been here for a while. You understand our stuff. What do you think every single problem comes down to?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
I'm going to switch gears in a second, right? This is interesting. I read this last week in some of my studies. The number one secret in selling. What do you guys think it is? This is super simple, but I thought it was just a great reminder while we're doing this reminder type meeting overall. Anybody know what it is? There's one thing you can do in terms of your presentation, how you're operating, also the phone call that gives 3 things instantly to the client, and it's proven by a Penn State study. That was a key part I want to share. Number 1, it makes you more competent in their mind. So these 3 things are instantly done if you do it. Number 1, it makes you more competent in their mind. Number 2, it makes you more courteous in their mind. And number 3, it makes you more likable in their mind overall, which is something that's super important, right? And it's one of those things that we always forget about. I get this a lot too. Overall, anybody ever looked at me and told me, like, man, Blake's pretty intense. Sometimes it's not easy to come talk to me, right? Things like that. Because why? I'm usually super stressed out. I got lots of shit going on. I'm very intense in how I operate. And so it's one of those things I have to remind myself a lot as well. But there's one thing, and I've got the study information here somewhere, right? When they went through the study, they did, I forgot how many people, I'll pull the link and share it with you guys. It's from psu.edu, whatever, they had this whole thing. But these people are seen more confident, more competent, and more courteous overall, right? And they did a test between 2 different study groups, and guess what the one thing they did different was? Smile. It was 100% the difference was smile, right? They had a smile in terms of how they operated and what they did. And here's the crazy part, right? Have you ever noticed a difference when somebody's smiling on the telephone and talks to you? So you can tell a difference if somebody's on the phone smiling when they talk to you, right? And so I've noticed this too, like even if I've called like American Airlines, I have this thing, like this platinum thing you get where you can call this special line if you have an issue, right? If I call the regular line, guess what? You got to wait on hold forever, and then you get somebody like in India or the Philippines, and they're not really helpful. But I get somebody on the platinum line, guess what? You can tell they're super trained, they're trying to take care of their certain clients, and they're smiling no matter what's going on, usually in a very tough situation, right? And so it's a great reminder that, hey, look, put a big smile on your face. In the Penn State study, I'm going to share a link in the group with you guys, but and the same thing, like, try to put a smile on your face and think negative. But what's happening is their subconscious mind is reading you and your smile and your energy, and they're judging you. And it's one thing we forget to check that box of doing. This is super basic stuff, but I think it's a great reminder that we all forget about, especially me, right? As you go on and go on, you get ground up in this meat grinder of real estate and people, that you got to make sure, okay, how am I going back and making sure I'm having that piece where I'm smiling? And here's the deal, right? What impact does it have even when you smile on the phone? You feel better, right? It's one of those things that you want to make sure I remind us. Actually talking back and forth with my coach, and he said that in the call center they had everybody put mirrors in front of their desk when they were on the calls, and so it made them realize when they're looking at the mirror that guess what? You got to be smiling, right? Which is just a great reminder of make sure you have that smile and what it is. But say in a recent study conducted by Penn State, it was shown that when smiles are perceived as likable, courteous, and more competent in the people they dealt with, right, as a consumer. And so if I can have them automatically become more competent just by me smiling, and I do that at the front end, it's one of those check boxes I want to have in my mind and make sure I'm hitting overall, right? And one thing to write down is that when you smile, the world smiles back at you, right? And that's just something for you guys to remember overall. And it's very, very hard for us to think about, right? So if you're getting bad energy from your clients and you're giving people, just smile, right? If you have a bad situation or somebody being rude to you, guess what you do? Smile. Either on the telephone or also face-to-face, and it helps do what? Neutralize the situation and keeps them much more happy. It's physically impossible for you to have a negative state of mind while you're having a true smile. If you notice, a lot of times, even if you try to, a lot of times your smile goes away. So it's super important to say, hey, look, smile, have the right energy, both when I walk in, during the presentation. Obviously, don't make it like, super awkward, but just constantly make sure, hey, how important is a smile? When people are talking to you, smile, right? Have that piece of that so they can have that same thing on the previous page we talked about, is that you have a connection, that you do care, right? Super important piece there in how I'm doing it, right? But the thing I was talking about too is that you can tell when somebody is smiling on the phone, and the question to ask, like, what impact does that have on you? It's positive, right? So if that brings less resistance in the sales process, I want to make sure I'm doing that in my process as well. That makes sense, you guys, there overall? All right, the main thing I want to teach you guys to talk about today is this part. I'm going to give you a couple other things. Other book that's super important. Anybody remember Chris Voss? Anybody know who he is?
Yeah, the negotiator FBI guy.
Yep.
Yeah, what's the book?
Never Split the Difference. You know what his number one negotiation trick was? The number one thing that he used. He's FBI. Anybody doesn't know who Chris Voss is? He's one of the top FBI hostage negotiators in the country. The difference, he's a big speaker now, but he negotiated like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hostage situations and bad situations as an FBI investigator. And when asked, hey, what's the number one thing that you did as a negotiator that got you the outcomes? And obviously he's very good at what he did, which is why he can write the books about it. He did one single thing that made a difference. And his number one secret to negotiation, what do you guys think it was? His number one thing that he used was empathy. So, what does empathy mean?
Feeling with them.
Okay, feeling with them. What else? It's ability to feel their situation, right? I have empathy, and empathy is more something that you feel, right? And so empathy is something that we feel as humans that we have to be able to understand. This is what happens, like when we have the stack that I go through Warrior, right? Anybody brand new will understand this. It's just journal thing we go through, and anytime you get angry about something, you go through this thing called the stack, and it asks you all these questions about, you could be talking about your friend or your wife or whatever. Hey, so-and-so, whatever it is. And you go through this question. What is it that made you mad about so-and-so? Well, they did this, this, and this. What do you think about so-and-so? They're a jerk. They're terrible. What exactly did they do to you? Well, they were rude to me. They did this, they did this. And the next question would get you every single time. They called it walk the block. What do you think the next question was?
Is that true?
Is that true? Right? I forgot about that one. There's another one too that, is there a time in your life when you've done the same exact thing to someone else? And guess what the question is every single time? Yeah. Is there a time I've been to somebody else? Yep. Is there a time I've been rude to somebody else? Yep. Right? It's one of those things. And so the reality is there times that you do that? And so the fastest way to get empathy is what? Put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, is there a time I've ever done this? Is there rude to you? Is there some time you've ever been rude to a customer service person? Probably. Right? And most times backed up by a story that you have that's not true. And so there's number one thing that we all tend to naturally do with everyone they want to be aware of. What do you think that is? We judge. Right? I've talked about this over and over. We naturally judge when we come into a situation of people. Right? We're all judgmental. And what do you think happens when you're in a sales situation, you have that type of energy? It naturally creates resistance. With who? The consumer. So here's the deal. You guys ever been to a sales situation you felt judged before? They didn't say it, but what happened? They felt it, right? You felt it overall. And so the reality is, I felt the judgment. What does that make you do subconsciously? You shut down, right? You push back. And here's the crazy part. They might not even judging you. That's just a story that you have as an insecurity, right? I've had a lot of times where people, you're judging me. I'm like, what? Dude, I didn't even think anything about that. That's just a story that you have that you're carrying with you. And so it's very important for us to understand that not only do we tend to judge naturally, some people are insecure about certain pieces, right? And if there's insecurity about things or they feel judged, there's natural resistance in the sales process. And so we want to make sure that what? No matter what I'm going through, I've watched this piece here, and you guys do all the time. People that you think is not qualified, or people that call in, or they don't sound as articulate as they should be, and all of a sudden we naturally do what? They judge, and they know it. Do you guys know when you get judged as a salesperson? I gave the whole course, that training about you guys when somebody's buying the Hyundai, right, or whatever it was, and then the dude didn't follow back up, whatever it was, right? And all of a sudden they miss out on 3 deals back to back to back. They're just not doing what you're supposed to do. And so that's the key part here. And so that's the whole thing. It creates resistance, right? And so great negotiations happen when we seek to understand. And so instead of you getting triggered by somebody, the way they're reacting to you, or instead of you judging, what do you want to do? I want you guys to seek to understand. Meaning what? Hey, let me have a little more empathy. And I could use this too. Like I get pissed a lot of times too on hey, what the hell is going on, right? And so then instead of reacting or getting triggered, I tend to back off a little bit. And I'd say, okay, let me understand more about this person. And as I've gotten better at psychology, what do I really want to understand? What's the story? Because a lot of times they're triggered, they're angry, or they're whatever based on the story they're telling themselves, which we know in most cases is what? Not true, right? Most people live a life triggered on stories about things that aren't true. It's their truth, but it's not actual fact or it's not reality. Most of our clients, right, live in what? They live in fantasy, and our job is to get them in fact. I told the guy out on the phone last week, I said, hey, look, I told you when I first met you, most of my job is to take you from your emotions when you go to fantasy, and my job is to bring you right back to fact. And guess what he did? Started laughing because he knew that's exactly what he was doing, right? It's one of those things that, but if I was triggered about him thinking his property is worth more than it is, how would that have worked out? Not very good. And I know, hey, look, I know that this dude is in emotion. He's creating stories to justify the thing that he wants, which is his worth more money than everything else in there. And so I was super calm, cool, collected, had massive empathy, and guess what it allowed me to do? Negotiate price reduction and an agent bonus, right? And that was his idea because that's what he wanted to do. He used to be a real estate agent years ago, and so that's the key part there with it. Does that make sense? My next one is understand, right? That's the goal, is I want to make sure I'm understanding. I seek to understand, which is what? I want to understand the story they're saying, the pain they're having, and their perspective on what that is. As leaders, as negotiators with you guys, make sure you seek to understand before you get to judgment, right? We all naturally do what? You all naturally judge. And it's just a habit we have to understand, right? And so I want you to remember this. I'm the one that creates resistance in my business, in my life, right? If you want to change the outcome, change the way you're thinking about the other person. And the one thing that we were talking about too, I mentioned over and over, I study NLP a lot. I learned that through Dan Kennedy. But the number one thing they teach you in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, is the ability to be a chameleon. What does that mean, you think? You be able to mimic your surroundings, right? So if I have somebody who's super whatever, I have the ability to what? To adapt to who that is. I don't judge. I don't think they're crazy. I adapt to that and able to do that. And then I'm able to use language patterns to help get them where I want to go. And so it's just a great reminder. This is some super one-on-one stuff we're talking about today, but I think it's a great reminder for all of us. And the reason I'm teaching it, I'm thinking, well, if we can't follow the basics of the script, right, how many other things are we missing, right? Which is why these are super simple things that create massive leverage that are small details. And that's why I had that as a part of that. And so if you want your life to work, right, remember this, I talked about this a couple months ago, is that people are doing the best they can in the moment with what? You guys remember? The skills and the tools they have. So anytime I see someone who's doing something right, I want to be able to coach them up as a client, right? Whatever it is, a potential client. People are doing the best they can in the moment with the skills and the tools that they have. But like most people are very good at doing this stuff. People just like them. That's the key part, right? If they're your same personality type, you get along naturally. You don't have to worry about this stuff. But the other 3 out of 4 personality types is where you're mismanaged, right? And you got to make sure that you're pausing yourself, being aware. So if you're a high C personality and you're with a high D, you're going to be triggered naturally, okay? If you're a high D and you're dealing with a C who's very slow or methodical, you're triggered naturally. And so this is when you got to go back to the checklist and say, hey, because all y'all say, man, I don't do this. But you don't do it to people just like you. The reality is you're getting triggered by people who aren't like you, but you're just not realizing or remembering it because you think it's them and not you. Does that make sense? Which is super important for us to think about overall. All right, last piece of reminders, all basic stuff, but I wanted to kind of create this as a all I care about is teaching you guys the top one and reminding you about getting all processed. But the last one here is super important, is accountability. What does that mean, you think? These are going back to our problems in our business, right? You got to make sure to self accountable in reality what you have, right? Nothing great has ever happened without a high level of accountability. Nothing great's ever happened without a high level of accountability, both in your personal life as well as your business. Meaning my body, right? If you want to work out, lose a lot of weight, guess what has to happen? Well, it's accountability. Tasha had a great, right, 75 hard or whatever it was, right? What'd you have to have?
I had to have a full-blown plan.
Massive accountability, right? In terms of what you want to do. Second part of accountability, try to remember, and there's 2 types of this. I'll go ahead and skip to the head. There's 2 types of accountability. Anybody know what they are? External and internal. What's the difference, you think?
External to make a room to keep you accountable.
External to make a coach, myself or Alex, whatever it is, right? At that point, a lot of times you have to really kind of ask for that. You know, the other way to do this is really good. It's like a lot of people do this in my coaching groups. Is you guys up the stakes, or someone you work with and say, here's the deal, dude. Every time I don't show up for a huddle, right, I'll pay $200 to XYZ. Right? Whatever it is. You got to create some stake, right, in the game. You have to create some skin in the game. External accountability. That's short term. That'll work for a little bit, but that's not going to work long term. right? What helps you win long term? Internal accountability. What does that mean? The ability to hold myself accountable. That creates discipline. Now, most people tend to do what? We lie. We twist reality, right? We tend to, oh, this happened. I got this going on. My kid had this, whatever. It's always something. That's why you notice the ones that miss the huddle. It's always a reason. Why? Because they don't tell themselves the truth like, hey, I just didn't show up. It's always a reason that they tend to do what? Justify the reason they're not there. And so part of internal accountability is the ability to hold yourself accountable in what you're able to have, and so that you're able to make sure that you actually own that and course correct in what that is. Does that make sense? Super important, right? Now write down that part. Accountability is the highest form of love, both for self and business. If you have any children, you have to kind of that do something wrong. What do you got to do sometimes? Hold them accountable. Is it tough? Yeah, but that's the highest form of love in that scenario. Why? Because you course correct. They know better than to do that. You guys with me on that? Then also, the one thing I had too is that your goal will rise and fall based on your level of self-accountability. Right? Your goal will rise or fall based on your level of self-accountability, which is super important. We all know that, but the reason I'm teaching this is because what does this connect with?
Following the process.
Following the process. That reason, if you guys understand, it's a full circle in terms of how this stuff works, right? So we're able to have these pieces here, but the key most important parts are the details of process. Am I following them? What are the small things I'm missing? Because all these are small things you're missing that's costing you a lot on the back end. Okay, it could be my tonality, it could be my sticking to the presentation, whatever it is overall, which makes a big, big difference.